The ringleader of a local investment scam pleads guilty in federal court today.
Glen is likely to spend several years in prison after admitting he lied to hundreds of people who trusted him with their investments and retirement accounts. And as Local 12's Joe Webb reports live from the newsroom, investigators still don't know how much money was lost. But Galemo is on the hook now to pay it back. Right, Joe?
That's right, Rob. You know, Glen admitted in court this morning that he ran a pretty elaborate scheme that handled around $100 million of other people's money from 2005 to 2013. He admitted he lied to them to get their money, lied to them about investing their money, then lied to them about how their investment was growing. So many of them were duped, ripped off, and then paid taxes on income that they really didn't earn. And for that, Glen is very likely going to federal prison. Glen didn't have anything to say on his way into federal court this morning, but he'd worked out a plea deal before getting here. Once inside, Galemo pled guilty to wire fraud and money laundering. Court documents detailed an 8-year scheme of luring investors with false promises and pocketing much of the money himself. It was a house of cards that came crashing down last summer.
A person who creates a web of financial lies will soon be caught up in it. And Mr. Galemo offered rates of over 30% returns to his investors. And unfortunately, these promises were not upheld.
It was your typical Ponzi scheme in which the early investors' money was used to pay, the later investors' money was used to pay off the early investors.
But according to investigators, not much was invested. In addition to a likely prison sentence, Glen agreed to forfeit about $3 million in assets, including his Madison Road home, the Walnut Hills office he bought and renovated as part of his ruse. Investigators say this building was stocked with large computer monitors tracking investment accounts that just didn't exist. His attorney says Galemo is committed to making the victims whole.
On behalf of Mr. Galemo, he says, I'm sorry, I done wrong, and I'm going to try and do what I can to make it right. Like a lot of people, like a lot of good people, they start out walking down the right path, and something happens, and they're faced with a choice, and they make the wrong choice.
Now, investigators say the amount of money lost by investors was in the range of $7 to $20 million. Galemo faces up to 40 years in prison, but is likely to get somewhere between 8 years and 15.5 years. In his plea agreement, Galemo agreed not to appeal his sentence unless it's more than 188 months, which is 15 years, 8 months. Now, the government won't appeal a sentence unless it's less than 8 years and 1 month. Judge Herman Weber will sentence Galemo on May 28th. Rob?
Joe Webb, thanks very much. Several of Galemo's victims were in federal court for this morning's hearing. They didn't want to talk on camera because many of them are parties in a civil suit filed against Galemo to try to at least recover their investments.